This is the story of my sheep hunt down the Kangakut River. This is one of the most remote places in all of the United States. It's 180 miles from the nearest road, so it is way out there. This is the plane that was to take us to our destination on the Kangakut River. We didn't actually fly out on this day because, as you can see, it's quite foggy, and we were on visual flight rules only. The Fairbanks Airport is a bit unusual in that it has a float plane lake for all of the float planes to take off and land. Here we are heading over the mountains north of Fairbanks, and we even got to see a couple of sheep on those mountains. The Yukon River floodplain is amazing with all of the oxbows and eddies and stuff like that. But it gives away to the Brooks Range eventually. And here's my first view of the Brooks Range. This is just another unnamed valley in the Brooks Range before we set down here to let off two people. They're going to be hunting this area. Then off we go, heading a little bit further south, about 13 miles to where my camp was going to be. Okay, the bush plane has left, and this is home for the night. And in the morning, we'll start heading off down the river and start our great adventure. Here's the guide getting the raft ready to go down the river. And here's a small moose shed that some yearling moose had left behind. The river takes us right up against the cliffs at times. And these cliffs, as you can see, are very, very sheer. What is more difficult to see is they're actually undercut below the water level so that the river actually flows underneath the cliffs a bit. The mountains along the way are just incredibly rugged, as you can see by these spires up above. But there's also beautiful things down low for people to see too. In the morning, we start hiking up the stream that has no name. As you can see here, this is what we had to do over and over and over again, crossing the stream many, many times as it meanders from one bank to the other. But it was incredibly beautiful the whole way up. This is actually a bear trail. Each one of those indentations that you see there is where a bear has put his feet in the same place over and over again, year after year. The unnerving part is my tent ends up about 10 feet away from this bear trail. It was the only place flat and away from the bushes. That evening, we climbed up to this knoll to look around for sheep. We found a whole bunch of ewes and lambs on the adjacent hillside, which would be off to the left in this picture, but very little in the way of rams. I got a special breakfast treat that morning and most mornings thereafter. There were wild blueberries growing all around, and so I just pick a handful of blueberries, throw them in the oatmeal, and have them burst out in this beautiful color. I really like this rock formation with all of the crystal plains showing up here so very clearly. And then there was this other rock which had the lichen pattern, which was just very remarkable to me. This is an absolute monster caribou. I would love to have hunted this guy, but it would have ended our sheep hunt because it would have taken us 2 days to pack him out. He was huge. The river which looks horizontal in the distance there is where we left the raft the day before and set up our base camp. This is the guide looking for sheep and caribou. I did see a bunch of caribou not long afterwards. There's a video coming up which shows them getting very close to me. At one point, I had them barking in front of me, coming down and barking in front of me like this, and barking behind me, and I was stuck in the middle and decided to vacate quickly.
That was exciting.
Okay, this is looking due north. We spent the day glassing from this location. There are a couple of sheep on the mountain straight ahead there, but after waiting several hours for them to get up and move around, looked like the biggest one was almost legal, but not quite. That was south. West. And back to the north. For generations, bears have been walking up the same trail, putting their feet in the same places. See all the bear footprints? Year after year after year. Putting their feet in the same places, right up to the bear bed. This photo shows a wolf track, a caribou track, and a bear track, all in the same photo. I imagine that might have been a little unnerving for the caribou if it was there. Here's my foot for scale. I had a wolf tag and a bear tag, but didn't find either one of these guys. I like to think of this as the hole-in-the-wall canyon because we saw many of these holes in the walls of the canyon. Go! Here I am in one of our many river crossings. Amazingly enough, we had these two Dall sheep graze to within 40 yards of us before they figured out that maybe we didn't belong there. They probably had never seen another human being before because this area is so remote and so few people travel to this area. Despite the difficulty of all the river crossings and everything, this was an incredible trip. Look at these fall colors. How often do you get fall colors in August? Up here you do. Just amazingly beautiful. Just a wee bit of rain there back towards the main river. This moose shed probably weighs 30 to 35 pounds, just enormous. We didn't see any moose because they only winter in this valley. This is a caribou skull and antlers returning to the earth where it came from. It was cold and misty on many mornings, but the low clouds were just amazing. Just incredibly beautiful to see, despite having to cross the river again and again. Once we got back to our Kangakut River base camp, it was time to do a little fishing. Here's a bunch of Arctic char that I caught. These are all females here, the kind of bland colors. But it was a great deal of fun catching them.
What's happening, boss?
It might be done jumping. It's jumping. Here it comes. Oh, dang. It's taking out line. I'm losing ground. There we go.
That's a two-handed fish. Who's running this show? There, she's starting to tire out.
You can tell it's only pulling out.
That's a heavy horse.
Let's give him a little bit more grip. There you go. Whoa!
Yeah. Now we're getting her tired out. Is this one dinner? Holy smokes. Oh my gosh, it's a tank. That's
my biggest fish ever.
That thing is huge. We're videoing. This is the 10-pounder we're after. This is the big red male. Slowly increase pressure up and then reel down. Yeah. Yep. There you go. Nice and slow. This is a big fish. Like the last one wasn't big, but this thing is a tank.
This is a two-handed fish.
There you go. Yep, nice and smooth. Oh, he's taking you to the cleaners. Slow him down just a little bit. There you go. Nice and smooth. Once you get his, yeah, once you get his head turned and he starts moving, make your move back. There you go. Now lift up high on the rod, high, and get ready. Get the rod tip up, slowly up. Okay, now go for it. Take him ashore. Oh my gosh! There you record. Look at the size of that fish. It's recording.
That is enormous.
Get him washed off.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording so we can take some photos. This is the sort of Arctic char that most fishermen see in their wildest dreams.
I think we're recording. How about that, Steve?
This is definitely the biggest fish I've ever caught.
Look at that
By
thing.
a large degree.
He is a tank.
This is a Alaska char, Arctic char. It's hard just holding it. He's so heavy.
Congrats, man. Let's let him go.
All right.
Congrats, man. That's a fish.
That's the plan, man.
That was a
catch
fish.
one big male, and we caught him. The next morning had beautiful cloud layers, as you can see in these photos. And then after getting a good start in the morning, we headed up to a spot where we could check out more wildlife, and spent the afternoon up there looking around. This is looking downstream on the Kangakut River, looking north basically. That's the drainage we went up to go sheep hunting. Down there in the middle is our camp, as you see the two tents, the orange and the white. This is yet another unnamed drainage. About half a dozen caribou down there on the left-hand side. And we're back to looking down the Kangakut, downstream, up north. We didn't see any sheep from up here, and the caribou were all females, but it was a great day. The next morning we were heading downstream, and we're privileged to see a bunch of caribou crossing the river. Just cruising down the Kangakut River. That was the toughest part of the river, and when there's high water, it's pretty amazing. We got it pretty easy on this run. Well, it doesn't look real bad right now, but we're approaching one of the most dangerous spots. Water pushing right into a wall. It is a bit hard to hear the guide talking here, but a little while back, some people were rafting down this river, went to the right-hand side,
the river
got
normal.
pushed up against those rocks and down under the water. They were actually underwater for a couple of minutes before they were finally able to get free. It was very, very dangerous.
Yep.
It just sucked the raft. It did spin out a bit more than that, like half an hour. So you don't want to take that inside, because then you're stuck right in the corner.
Oh, I can see it boiling down there.
Yeah. So you got to take this outside lane, which is more boulders, so you can get an angle on it, so you can pull off of that wall. Higher, and if you took that outside lane, it just pulls you right in here.
And then you get to calm water. Amazingly enough, there were 2 other people in the area who could not get back to Fairbanks because of weather in the Brooks Mountains. And so they came to join us. We had great weather.
We might have guests.
If you watch closely, you can see his landing gear hit one of the bushes on the way to the landing strip. This is my guide, Dan, holding the sheep that Daniel shot. This was a very special evening. We each went around the tent, one by one, talking about how special this hunt was for each one of us. Here are Dan and Mackenzie with the sheep. They are fast friends despite having only known each other for about a year. And Dan and Mackenzie have known each other for a bit longer than that. But they're great friends also. This is the beautiful spot where we were weathered in for 3 days. A couple of photos of the plane with the moon up above early in the morning when they were about to leave.
We've got an Arctic sunrise this morning. Looking north.
saw this caribou jawbone working its way back into the soil.
Well, we're kind of stuck here in Alaska. Plane can't take off. Fog. Got weather coming in. You see how things work out. Right now, I'm just watching the clouds drifting past the mountains.
After Mackenzie and Daniel left for Fairbanks, we were stuck there because of weather in Fairbanks. After a while, I got tired of sitting in my tent, went outside and looked up the hill where there was a lot of caribou trails coming down the hillside, and I saw a lone bull. Looked with my binoculars, saw antlers, went and got Dan, and he said, "Let's go." We headed for the river because the caribou had dropped down into the willows at that point, and we managed to intercept him right before he crossed the river, and I was able to take this really nice caribou. It's the very first caribou that Dan had ever gotten in this area that had already shed its velvet. I recorded this session of just the river flowing by because I've gotten an amazingly large number of positive reports of a previous video I did of a river just flowing by.
Those mountains ahead are the northern edge of the Brooks Range in Alaska.
If you have to get stuck someplace, this sure is a beautiful place to get stuck. They call this the gates of the Brooks Range. What you see there is the Brooks Range. Where I'm standing is the North Slope of Alaska.
That's our ride home.
Here's a pilot taking off without us to deliver some of the supplies, including the raft that we took down the river, back to another camp. Then he'll come back for us and take us back to Fairbanks. Now we're flying in a few minutes over what it took us days to travel down. Here the pilot had spotted a couple of sheep on this hillside, and he's turning in to get a better look at them. Then, as you can see in just a moment, he realizes that there is indeed yet another mountainside approaching in front of us, and it's time to take some evasive action. This is the approach to Fort Yukon. We stop and get some more fuel so we can get all the way back to Fairbanks. Time to take off from Fort Yukon and complete the final leg of our air journey. This is pretty much the end of our journey, approaching Fairbanks Airport.